So my wife and I just recently moved to New York City from Pensacola, Florida, which is quite the journey if you did not know. And we are settling in, we're opening all our boxes, and I can't help but think back on all the various things that we didn't know along the way that I thought that I should tell you. Because if you're like me and you had this itch to move to New York City, you've been watching every single piece of content out there. Tips and tricks, apartment hunting videos, even just like vlogs of people who live in New York City, and you're trying to just glean any little bit of information, any little hit of, ooh, maybe one day, just that little dream. It feels a lot like you had bought a lottery ticket and you're waiting to see. But, you know, for those who actually go ahead and make the transition, I found that there's a lot that those videos leave out. So for this video, I want to take you through my top 5 tips for how to apartment hunt in New York City that are not covered in the other videos. I watched Ashley's video, I watched Olena's video, I watched some of Brett's videos with tips, and I watched about 1 billion of Cash Jordan's videos, and these 5 things did not appear in any of these videos. That is why good guy Zach Green is making this video and sharing this information with you so that you can go ahead and like plan your move, make it smooth. But I want to give you a heads up that tip number 5, the last tip in this video, is probably the most important one because it's going to save you from having to deal with roaches, rodents, and other renter problems. So tip number 1, almost everything is virtual now. That means the tours, that means the application, that means all your payments. With so many tours being virtual only, so many apartments won't let you come in person, which is like fine, but it's so hard to get a sense of scale of a space. And lots of apartments listed on StreetEasy do not have any sort of layout, any sort of floor plan with measurements that show you how big your space actually is going to be or the total square footage. So when you do a virtual tour with the broker or, you know, the landlord, sometimes, often they're going to have their phone set to the ultra-wide camera and it's going to make the space look huge. This happened to us, and I'm not mad about it because I love the apartment that we wound up with. But when we did a virtual tour, the broker 1000% had his camera set to ultra-wide because it looked so much bigger than it actually is. Keep that in mind. You're not going to get a true sense of scale when you're doing a virtual only tour. Everything's going to be smaller than you think, I promise. Also virtual applications. And let me tell you, this is the most annoying piece of crap because lots of companies, instead of like making an intelligent online application where you can like go fill out the form and type everything in, they just take their printed form that you would normally like go to the apartment, tour it, you know, and then fill out the application right there. They've just taken that and they're emailing it to you as a PDF. And you know what is a pain in the butt to do is add information to a PDF that already exists. You got to either download it, print it, write on it, and then scan it so you can send it back. Just 4 whole steps. And who owns a printer? Or you gotta like drag it into Photoshop or some other sort of PDF program. It was a nightmare to just fill out these applications. And we applied for like 7 places, and we both had to apply, my wife and I, because every single person associated to the apartment is gonna have to apply. This is one of the like main downsides of things being mostly virtual, is the applications. Companies, if you're watching this, please make a virtual version of your application because it doesn't need to be this hard. The last thing that has gone mostly virtual is payments. So your good faith deposit, your first month's rent, your security deposit, your application fees, all this other sort of stuff, which is good and bad because it's super convenient. You don't have to go get a certified check made, which especially for us, moving from out of state, we don't have a bank in New York set up, so we would have had to carry actual cash to the bank and then have them turn it into a certified check. That's like a hassle. But the downside of all this is that when you're sending stuff virtually, it's a little harder to feel out, is this place legit? Are they sketchy? You gotta be really like sure. So that's tip number 1. Everything basically is virtual now. Tip number 2, if you need to use a personal guarantor, they need to be as dedicated to your apartment hunt as you are. The reason for this is because when you're applying to an apartment and you need to use a personal guarantor, you need them to submit every application that you do. And since you're gonna be submitting to multiple places, because it takes a couple days to hear back and you know, you don't know if you're gonna miss something, whatever, it can end up where they're having to do 5 different applications. And every single application, like I talked about before, is often obnoxious to fill out just the form. Then you gotta send 6 to 7 supporting documents, which takes a long time. Also, every single person who is applying, so for me, it was me, my wife, and my personal guarantor. That's 3 people applying. So 3 people had to submit a whole ton of crap, and then it's $20 per person per application. So it was essentially $60 in total just for us to to apply to a place to get turned down like 6 or 7 times. So basically, it's a lot of effort to ask your personal guarantor to put in. So you need to be sure that, you know, there's someone who can like handle it and are willing to do this for you. Obviously, if it's a family member or whatever, and they said yes, you ask them to do this, I would assume that they are, but just be sure that like the time that you're doing it is like good for them. Also, they need to be moving as quickly as you are with the apartment hunt, because landlords a lot of the time will go with the first acceptable tenant whose application is in their pile. So, you know, say you submit your application an hour after touring. Maybe you're even the first person in and you get your application in right away. Amazing, so quick. But your personal guarantor, they're not available to fill out your application for another 12 hours. That could put your pile number 5 in the overall like list of applications, and then say applicant number 2 has a good application, you don't get a chance to be looked at and considered, even though you were the first person to see it and the first person to submit your application. So your personal guarantor needs to be moving quick as heck to make sure that you guys don't miss out on anything just by getting your application in a little later. Number 3, this goes out for all my self-employed homies out there and all my self-employed personal guarantors, because if you are self-employed, you need to get a letter of employment from your CPA. Basically, whenever you would submit an application, you need to give them a letter of employment from your place of business or a letter of intent to hire from your future company if you're relocating to New York for like a new work opportunity or whatever. But if you're self-employed, a landlord doesn't want to hear, yeah, I work for myself and I got to tell you what, I'm an amazing ass employee and I am not going to fire myself. And you know what is another thing? I'm going to make $2 million next year, because your landlord's like, I don't freaking believe you. I don't care. And so what you need to do is get a letter from your CPA. We had to do this because our career, like I'm a wedding photographer. We have a wedding photography business. Our CPA wrote a letter that basically just said, I've been, you know, doing Zach Green's taxes for a couple years. He does indeed own this business and works for it. I can't project out how much he's going to make, you know, in whatever time period. Bada bing, bada bing. Some CPAs might be like, yeah, based off their Q1 numbers, it seems like they're going to make $250,000 this year, which would be epic. But it really seems like this is one of those things where you just kind of need to like have it if you're self-employed and check the box on. But really what it says doesn't super matter, as long as it's on like CPA company letterhead and it's signed by them with their like official CPA number or whatever. Tip number 4, every single person tells you, every video on YouTube that gives you like New York City apartment hunting tips tells you that the market's bananas and that it's really hard to get a place. And that is absolutely true. But the majority of these videos I'm finding are from 2 or 3 years ago. And they say things in the context of, when you tour an apartment, be sure to have your papers ready. Be sure to fill out an application on the spot. Be sure to potentially give a good faith deposit right then and there. That doesn't work anymore, because since everything's gone virtual, everything's kind of punted down the field. And so even though you're the first one to an apartment, like I said earlier, you might end up, by the time you get your application submitted, you might end up being number 5, 6, 1,000 to apply to an apartment. And with this, not only are you rushing maximum speed to get your application in for an apartment, but then the landlord can take 2 or 3 days to look over everything. So say you come to New York City for a week. Day 2, you tour an amazing apartment. You submit your application, whatever, who knows what number it is in the pile. Give it 2 or 3 days till you hear back. In the meantime, you're having to submit to a bunch of other places. Now imagine a situation where even though you're lovely and you make good money and all this sort of stuff, there were more qualified applicants for all the places you applied to. So it could be day 6 or 7 of your trip. You've applied to a bunch of spots. You've been grinding your freaking nuts off, running to all these different apartments, touring them and submitting applications and paying, you know, $20 per person per apartment, all this other sort of stuff. And then you get denied for every single one, or not denied, but not accepted, you know? Then it's time for you to go home. No, sorry. Way to spend a week here and do a whole lot and spinning wheels, but you know, you're leaving without an apartment, and that's a huge bummer. So this is basically what happened to us. We came up here, we toured a bunch of places, we submitted to a bunch of places, and we didn't get accepted. And so we had to go home, tail between our legs, and just like, we didn't have an apartment. So with how crazy things are now specifically, and how many people are doing things mainly virtually, you would be amazed at the amount of places that are being applied to sight unseen. And that's probably, maybe not probably, but it's not unlikely that you'll need to apply to places sight unseen. And that's exactly what we did here. How can you make sure that you're not getting scammed in this situation? Well, do a virtual tour, do like a FaceTime tour with the landlord, wait for tip number 5. Tip number 5 is great for if you can't tour a place in person, check out all the pictures. And then also just kind of go off your like gut feeling about it. If you do get the chance to come up here and tour some different places in person, you're gonna learn a lot about what neighborhood you like, what size apartment you're looking for, what sort of fixtures like are actually important to you once you're in a space, and just other like sorts of things to look out for. Our current apartment, I would say, on day one or like before we even actually got to New York, I don't think we would have like been as stoked on. I guess if we could have toured here in person, we would have been pretty stoked on it, although it looks crazy different with stuff in it than empty. Somehow it looks bigger when there's stuff in here. I don't understand that. But over the couple days of like touring actual New York City apartments within our price point, we kind of like had our expectations molded around like what was actually possible. And so now, you know, we were able to find this apartment, see it online, realize that it like checked all the boxes and get our applications in and stuff. So all that to say, like if I had to sum up tip number 4, be willing, because you might have to continue your apartment hunt virtually, because you can't just stay up here for, you know, forever. Tip number 5, genius tip, use 311 to look up a building that you are interested in renting at. 311 is the like renter hotline. You can submit issues about your apartment or your building or whatever to 311. And then there's supposed to be some amount of help that comes by, or your landlord gets in trouble. I don't know. But you use it for things like, oh shoot, like there's a infestation of insects or rodents. I don't want to say the R word because I don't want to jinx my apartment. Or there's constantly, the hallways smell like gas. You know, I'm afraid this building's going to explode. You can see what current and past tenants have like reported the building for, which is so helpful, especially because when it comes down to tip number 4 and you maybe / probably are going to end up virtually apartment hunting, you're not going to be able to look in the cupboards, you know, necessarily and see, are there little roach poops, whatever. I said it. Doesn't matter. Okay, we're moving past it. You're not gonna be able to see that. But what you can do is look and see, is there a history of people saying that there's an issue with roaches at this apartment building? If not, good to go. Because that's the sort of thing that like people probably are gonna report on. Is it perfect? No. But if you look at a building and see there's something negative, is that like definitely something you wanna be worried about? Yes, for sure. Now, if there was like a report in 2012 or whatever, and there was just one of that specific category of thing, who cares? It's been 10 years, you know, and there's not like a repeat, you know, offense situation. And our building showed up swimmingly on 311. So I'll leave the exact website for this down in the description. So click it if you're like doing an apartment hunt, check it out. MBD, it's great. There are some websites where you have to pay for like the report or whatever, but there was one I found, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but like I said, I'll throw it in the description if I can find it. That was free and just shows you all the history. This is baller. Also, similarly, there are some websites that review landlords and buildings, so you can check those out, type your little address in. If you have your landlord's name, type his name in, see if they have like good reviews or whatever. The last thing is you can go on the Ask NYC subreddit and be like, yo, does anybody have experience with this building? People leave comments and, you know, say good things or bad things. But 311, you don't want to have R words. You don't want to have other R words. That's rats and roaches. But that's the last time I'm saying it. I'm done. And if you use this tip, then you are probably not going to have these issues. Or if you see a place has these issues, you can just skip right on by it. Who needs it? Don't even apply. So yeah, so those are 5 tips that hopefully will help you on your upcoming New York City apartment hunt. Let me know down in the comments if there is something you didn't know. Call me out if I'm a liar and some of these tips were indeed in other people's videos. I probably just didn't see them. I didn't mean to steal them. And also, if you have more questions about apartment hunting in New York City, let me know. I don't claim to be an expert, but we did just go through it, so maybe I would have some sort of anecdote about what we just experienced or whatever that could help you out. If you enjoyed this video, if you appreciated my content and the time I put into this, firstly, thank you for appreciating me. Secondly, like, subscribe. I'm planning on putting out a couple more videos about our move and then also like our new life in New York City in general. Tonight, we're gonna go see Book of Mormon. How fun is that? We won the ticket lottery. It's gonna be great. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day. You're great, I'm sure. Bye.